So, last time we set things up to get the ball rolling, but nothing we did actually made anything resembling a game. And just like how a house isn't really a home without furniture, a Godot project isn't a game without scenes, assets, or scripts. So today we're starting part 2 of 5 in making our very own platformer engine. And the goal of this video is pretty simple. A player sprite on the screen and some terrain tiles. That's it. We're not doing movement, we're not putting in any enemies, we're not doing any jumping. We're just doing the actual graphics showing up instead of a sad gray void. But before we start drawing tiles, let's look back at the kind of murky origin of the platforming genre on the NES. And despite what some people think, Super Mario Bros. Was not actually a launch title. It came out over 2 years after the NES was first released, or the Famicom if you want to use the Japanese word for it. And before Mario laid down the law of platformers, things were a bit chaotic. You had Donkey Kong, a single-screen arena with ladders and tiny jumps, and then along came Donkey Kong Jr., which added vines and really weird momentum, and Popeye, which didn't even let you jump, but most people would probably still call these games platformers. So platforming rules, they weren't really rules yet. They were sort of guidelines, suggestions, vibes. That's why our engine will start in the same kind of primordial soup. There won't be any scrolling, and I know I promised that last video, we'll get there. There won't be any power-ups, there will be no fancy enemy variety, it will just be one enemy type, simple platforms, and eventually a character who can only kill enemies by jumping on them. Some kind of jump man, if you will. And for context, here's roughly where we end up after the first 4 videos. Yeah, not the most thrilling gameplay ever created, but trust me, the foundations we're putting in will make everything else from Super Mario Bros. Movement to Mega Man shooting way easier later. And yes, this tiny engine that you just saw still requires about 254 lines of code. That's my cat again. But cuckoo, you say, in that outraged, wounded tone you use when you think I've lied to you. You said we weren't going to code. I did. You're a liar. You lying liar, pants on fire. What I did say was we'll do as much as possible using Godot's visual UI. But Godot is not a drag and drop engine. GDScript is Python-flavored code, so if you want to make a game in Godot, you're going to have to code. It's inevitable. You can't get away from it. I like coding about as much as you do, maybe even less, but Godot is free, open source, and actually fun when you get the hang of it, so I'll walk you through everything. And besides, good news! This episode has 0 code, so you will have a full week to emotionally prepare yourself for that. Anyway, let's get started with the actual work. You will immediately notice 3 colored lines in the viewport, the big window we're looking through. There's red, which is the x-axis, there's green, which is the y-axis, and then there's blue, which is our actual game screen that we set up last time. If you don't see them, make sure to click the 2D icon at the top. NES games calculated everything through coordinates. Positions, movement, collision, all of it. This matches how the NES drew everything tile by tile on a CRT. So next, change your grid step back to 8x8. I know that last time I used 16x16, but the NES actually used 8x8 tiles, and we're keeping this accurate from the start. You'll thank me later. And also probably curse me because I made you do extra work. Sorry about that, that was my screw up. After that, we're going to go to the tiles folder and we're going to see that I've already placed something called a spritesheet.png here. And you can download that file in the description. It is exactly 128 times 256 pixels big. matching how the NES CHR memory was split. You had the top 128 times 128, and those were the sprites, or CHR0, and you had the bottom 128 times 128, the background tiles, or CHR1. The NES could only show 25 colors at once, 12 sprite colors and 13 background colors. We are not enforcing that today, but we will be getting closer as we refine things. And now we'll convert this PNG into actual usable tiles. Right-click the tiles folder, select new resource, and search for tileset. Name it chr.tres. And in the inspector, the menu on the right, select tile size 8x8. Now open the tileset editor at the bottom of the screen, press the plus, select Atlas, pick the sprite sheet, and then let Godot auto-slice everything. And then to navigate this area, you can zoom with the scroll of the mouse, the scroll wheel, or you can use the middle mouse button to kind of drag yourself around. It takes a little while to get used to. Now you'll see our player, a happy little guy, some coins, a Goomba-like thing, a spiny, and all the background tiles and font glyphs down at the bottom. These are, of course, placeholders, purely for development. Do not sue me, Nintendo. I don't have any money. It will be a net loss for you, I promise. Now, we're going to be making the player scene. The player scene will be essentially, it will be like the body of the player character with like the skeleton and the muscles and the blood and sinew and guts, all that inside of it. So create a new scene, make it a 2D scene, rename the root to player, and then save the scene as player.tscn. But here's the big thing. We're not going to keep it a node 2D. We're going to change its type. So once you've saved the scene, right-click the player node, the one you renamed to player, change its type into character body 2D. And now add a child to that called sprite 2D. Select the sprite 2D and set the texture to spritesheet.png, just like I'm doing on the screen. It will load in the whole sheet, which is not what we're using, because that's way too much. So enable region in the right panel, in the inspector, that's the one. So in the inspector, enable region, set width and height to 16 times 16, and leave the X and Y at 0. And yeah, I know, it looks blurry. And here's how we're gonna fix it. But first of all, yeah, you're seeing the little guy, right? That's all you see, the little pink guy. But how to fix this is that we go to project setting, rendering, textures, default texture filter nearest. Otherwise, Godot is going to be like, oh, I'm going to just add a little bit of anti-aliasing. We don't want that. We want the crisp, clear, pixel-perfect NES textures. So default texture filter nearest. Now it's looking like it should. Oh, and a little quick NES side note. A real NES sprite tile could only show 3 visible colors and transparency. Now, our little pink friend here actually has 4 colors, which means he is illegal and must be punished. I'll fix his pants before episode 2. They're gonna be black. Sorry, Pim. Anyway, ignore the no collision box warning. We are going to solve that later. Don't even worry about it. Don't even worry about it. Now we're going to make the level. So first of all, go up to scene, select new scene, select the node 2D and name it level 1. And then we're going to immediately add a child to this called tile map layer. And finally, you're going to assign the chr.tres, you remember that thing we made back then, as the tile set. Once we've done that, we can scroll down to CHR and grab the green background tile down here amongst all the other green tiles and paint it on your ground. And then also paint 3 rows of black tiles at the top of the screen, and this will become the HUD space, or the heads-up display space later. If you accidentally paint some tiles where they shouldn't be, you can just right-click them and they'll go away, lickety-split, no problem. As you might have noticed, the default background color is gray. It is horrible. I don't like it, you don't like it, nobody likes it. We can change that. If you go to project setting, rendering, environment, you can select the default color. Pick a muted light blue for now. We're going to change that to fit in with the NES later, but to be honest, most NES games actually tiled in everything. You couldn't just leave a field empty. In an NES game, you had to literally declare a tile for every single part of the game. Otherwise, I assume it would be black. I'm not entirely sure how that worked, but we are going to do that as well later on. But for now, pick a color that doesn't hurt your eyes. And now we're gonna finally add the player to this scene. So first go to level 1, add a child to level 1, make it marker 2D, and name it player spawn. Place it a few tiles above the floor, like so. Then right click the scene, just the scene, not anything in the scene, and select instance child scene. Pick player.tscn. Now Pim, our little character, is going to appear magically. So drag him down to put him into the scene and put him roughly where the spawn marker is. Right now that doesn't really matter, but we're going to be using that in a later video. And finally, add another child, camera 2D, and make sure it's enabled. And also drag its view down so you can actually see your level. That's a mistake that I made. Don't do that. It's silly, but it's easily fixed. Just drag the camera down so you encompass the entire blue frame. This is your camera. This is what you're going to see in the game. Now, we can't run this scene right away because if you remember, the first scene we made was main, and we set main as the starting scene. That's what is loaded when Godot runs the game. And main doesn't have this in it. It's level 1 that has everything in it. So if you press F6, you will run the current scene, which is level 1. So what are we going to do next? We are going to add level 1 to main scene. We're going to instance it. Just like we instanced player into level 1, we are going to instance level 1 into main. And instancing works the way that you're basically just making a copy or a reference to the original scene in another scene. So you probably are wondering, why aren't we doing everything in main? Because that's the starting scene. Well, once we get like 10, 15 levels in a game, main is going to be so full of nodes that is going to be completely impossible to navigate. I promise you, it'll be a lot. So it's much easier to instantiate other scenes into the scene to keep it all neat and clean and separated. Go into main.tscn, right-click main, or right-click the scene, instance child scene, and pick level 1. Now, after you've done this, if you press F5, it will boot the game directly into level 1. And that's what we're going to do. Main is just going to be everything that's always in the game, and it's the game flow. The heads-up display is going to be there. I don't really know what else is going to be there, to be honest, but we'll see later on. We got the level scenes. These are the actual levels. We got the player, who is a reusable character, and the enemies are also going to be reusable characters. And then we have the tile set, which is the sort of universal map of all the sprites and tiles we will be using. So whenever you're editing level 1, the main scene will update automatically. And the same goes if you're editing player, it will update in both level 1 and in main. Because player is still in main, because player is instantiated into level 1. That's sort of how it works. It's like a Matryoshka doll, if you will. Now, let's get a little list of what we've done today, and then we can sort of pat ourselves on the back and say, good job. Good job. You made some sprites and you put them on a tile map. So what did we do? Well, we imported an NES style sprite sheet, a CHR0 and CHR1, which is how sprite sheets were made for the NES. We built a tile set sliced into 8x8 tiles. And from that, we created a tile map layer for the terrain. We made a player scene using character body 2D. We displayed the player using region mode, and we fixed the pixel filtering. Now that's probably the most important part. We don't want any blurring to go on. We also built level 1 with some terrain, a spawn point, and a camera. and we wired level 1 into main. Might not seem like much on the paper, but everything has to start somewhere, and although we didn't do any physics or movement or collisions, they will be coming up in the next episode, which unfortunately will have some code in it, but I'll try to keep things simple, and I will explain every little line of code that we use. This episode was all about getting the NES style visuals on the screen and setting up the structure the entire engine will build upon. So if the previous episode was the skeleton, a very shitty skeleton, this episode was more like the sinews and cartilage that keep the bones together and bind the muscles to the skeleton. Next video is going to be the muscles, and then we're gonna add skin and hair and everything like that until we get a fat little Italian plumber who really likes to stomp on Koopas. Stomping Koopas. That's what he likes to do. Anyway, thank you so much for sticking with me. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. You can download the entire project in the description. I will also have the sprite sheet there. If you don't feel like coding, or if you want to compare your code to mine, you can simply download that and open it up as a separate project in Godot. You can import zip files into Godot, by the way, so you don't even need to unzip them. But they will be zipped because they're like half the size of what they otherwise would be. Anyway, I'm rambling. Thank you so much for hanging around. I'm Cuckoo Kairu, and I hope you will be continuing to make these games with me, and I promise you that it will get pretty exciting pretty soon. Anyway, see you next time. Have a great one. Bye-bye.